courtroom was silent, heavy with the kind of tension that makes every breath feel loud. And then, what happens when the son of a powerful police chief crosses the line and lays hands on a veteran judge? That single question is where this story begins. Not with a verdict, not with a trial, but with a moment of pure, reckless defiance that no one in this courthouse could ever have expected. Before the public outrage, before the headlines, before the protests, there was a quiet hallway, a stubborn young man, and a judge who had spent decades upholding justice with steady hands and unwavering integrity. Today, those hands would be pushed, literally, but we're not there yet. This is a story about power versus justice, about a young man who believed he was untouchable, and a veteran judge who refused to bow to intimidation, no matter who stood in front of him. As you follow this unfolding confrontation, listen closely. The faint hum of tension rising, the echo of footsteps in a courthouse corridor, the distant slam of a gavel, and the murmur of people who sensed that something was about to go terribly wrong. Because in just a few moments, a single impulsive act, a shove fueled by ego and entitlement, would shake the entire courtroom, leave witnesses in disbelief, and change a young man's life forever. But before we reach that turning point, you need to understand exactly how the fuse was lit. Before the shocking confrontation, it's important to understand the people at the center of it. Judge Frank Caprio had spent decades in the courtroom. Known for fairness and calm authority, he was the kind of judge who never needed to yell. One story followed him everywhere. Years ago, two families erupted into a loud argument during a hearing, shouting and lunging toward each other. Officers prepared to step in, until Caprio gently raised his hand, stepped off the bench, and spoke to them quietly. Within moments, the room settled. No force, no threats, just respect. But the young man involved in this incident grew up very differently. The police chief's son, 25 years old, athletic and sharply dressed, carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences. His expensive clothes, his loud attitude, his sharp tone, everything about him suggested entitlement. In the city, people whispered about his temper. Minor incidents at bars and nightclubs disappeared before they reached the record. A traffic stop was handled internally. Every mistake seemed to be wiped clean. Inside the courthouse, staff weren't surprised by his behavior. When he walked in, he did it like he owned the hallway, shoulders back, chin up, ready to challenge anyone who questioned him. Security guards traded looks. Clerks sighed quietly. As for his father, the police chief, he was respected publicly, even admired. But behind that respect lived a quiet rumor. He protected his son more than he should. And with these two worlds, earned respect and inherited privilege, now on a collision course, what happened next was almost inevitable. It happened just outside courtroom 3B, one of the busiest hallways in the entire courthouse. The morning was moving normally until the police chief's son approached the security checkpoint. A simple, routine scan. Everyone else passed through without a word. But not him. He stopped, scoffed, and shook his head. "I don't need this," he snapped. "Do you even know who my father is?" Security tried to explain protocol, but his voice only grew louder, sharp enough to echo down the hallway. Clerks peeked out from their offices. Lawyers slowed their steps. The tension spread quickly. Judge Caprio, preparing for the next session, heard the raised voices from inside the courtroom and stepped out. He approached calmly, hands folded, asking what the issue was. The young man didn't back down. Instead, he stepped toward Caprio, fast, closing the distance aggressively. "I deserve respect," he shouted, jabbing a finger toward the judge. "I'm not getting searched like some criminal." Witnesses held their breath. Security shifted uncomfortably, unsure how far this would go, or if they were even allowed to intervene. Then it happened in one sudden burst. The chief's son shoved Judge Caprio. A quick, impulsive push, but strong enough to make everyone in the hallway gasp. Files slipped from clerks' hands. A lawyer muttered, "No way." A security officer froze mid-step, eyes wide, waiting, hesitating, because this wasn't just anyone. This was the police chief's son. For a moment, the entire hallway fell silent. A stunned, disbelieving silence that marked the exact second everything changed. For a brief moment after the shove, the hallway sat in stunned silence. Judge Caprio steadied himself, one hand touching the wall, but his expression never broke. No anger, no fear, just controlled resolve. He straightened his robe, looked the young man directly in the eyes, and spoke with the same calm tone he used in his courtroom. "Security," he said firmly. "Detain him, now." The son froze. His confidence cracked instantly. This wasn't the reaction he expected. Not from a man he believed he could intimidate, and certainly not in a courthouse where his father's badge usually carried more weight than the rules. "You can't be serious," he muttered, stepping back. "My father." Judge Caprio cut him off without raising his voice. "No one is above the law in my courthouse." Security officers glanced at one another, caught between fear and duty. Their hesitation filled the hallway with even more tension. Everyone watched, clerks, attorneys, bystanders, waiting to see if justice would actually stand firm against privilege. Finally, one officer exhaled and stepped forward. Then another. The son's eyes widened in disbelief as the handcuffs came into view, his earlier arrogance replaced with shock. And as the officers reached for him, the narrator's voice hangs in the air. But what Caprio did next, no one saw coming. The courtroom filled faster than anyone expected. People squeezed into every bench, whispering about what happened in the hallway. The air felt heavy, like everyone had stepped into a moment bigger than the case itself. The chief's son, who once walked these halls with arrogance, now sat quietly at the defendant's table, shoulders stiff, eyes avoiding the crowd. For the first time, he wasn't the one people stepped aside for. Now they stared at him. His defense lawyer leaned close, whispering rapid instructions, trying to salvage what looked like an impossible situation. Across the room, prosecutors reviewed their notes, preparing to challenge any attempt to twist the narrative. The courthouse staff, still shaken, kept glancing toward Judge Caprio's bench, waiting for him to enter. When Caprio finally stepped in, silence hit instantly. His presence alone commanded order. Reporters lowered their cameras for a moment, sensing the seriousness. The judge surveyed the room, taking in the tension, the press, the worried expressions, and finally the defendant who had shoved him just an hour earlier. Despite the chaos outside, Caprio remained steady. He reminded the court that personal connections, power, and influence had no place in determining justice. No outbursts, no exceptions, no favoritism. Every word he spoke tightened the atmosphere further. A soft, suspenseful beat in the narration. The courtroom held its breath. Everyone knew the next minutes would define the entire case, and maybe the town itself. Within minutes, the story exploded beyond the courthouse walls. News stations interrupted regular programming to broadcast the headline in bold red: "Police Chief's Son Assaults Judge." Clips of the hallway confrontation spread online at lightning speed, shared thousands of times before the afternoon had even ended. People were stunned, not just by the shove, but by the fact that it happened to Judge Caprio, a man widely respected for fairness and restraint. Social media became a battlefield of opinions. Comments flooded every platform, some calling for the chief's resignation, others demanding the son be arrested immediately. Hashtags surged to the top of national trends. Users dissected every frame of the leaked footage, amplifying the outrage. The police chief eventually stepped forward with a public statement. His face looked heavy, the weight of his position and fatherhood pulling in opposite directions. He condemned the incident, yet his tone carried a hint of pain, an attempt to balance leadership with personal loyalty. But the public wasn't in a forgiving mood. Outside the courthouse, crowds gathered with signs raised high: "Equal justice for all," "No special treatment," "Accountability now." Their chants echoed through downtown, drawing more attention with every passing hour. Reporters swarmed the area, capturing the growing movement. Inside legal circles, discussions intensified. This was no longer a minor outburst. Official charges were being filed. For the chief's son, it marked the end of the quiet protection he'd always had. For the first time in his life, consequences had arrived, loud and unavoidable. The situation became more than a courtroom scuffle. It became a symbol of the community demanding fairness, regardless of power or pedigree. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence as Judge Caprio adjusted his glasses and looked directly at the young man who had once walked these halls with arrogance. His voice was steady, firm, but carried a weight that made the entire room lean in. This court believes in accountability and in the possibility of change, Caprio began. Not a whisper moved. He explained that a traditional jail sentence would do nothing to teach humility, nothing to break a cycle of privilege. Instead, Caprio delivered a ruling that struck the room like a thunderbolt. The police chief's son would serve months of mandatory community service at a veterans rehabilitation center, the very type of people Caprio had spent decades defending. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Lawyers turned. Reporters nearly jumped to their feet. The young man stood frozen, stunned that the judge had chosen a punishment not of pain, but of perspective. Caprio continued, "You will serve those who sacrificed everything. You will listen to their stories. You will learn what real respect looks like." The young man's shoulders dropped. For the first time, his expression wasn't anger, but understanding. A quiet, reluctant humility washed over him as he lowered his gaze. The courtroom watched, some in awe, others in approval. Caprio's decision wasn't just legal. It was moral, symbolic, and deeply human. It carried a message far beyond the walls of courtroom 3B. No one is above the law, and everyone is capable of change. A soft breeze from the ceiling fan rustled the American flag beside the bench as the judge stood, ending the most tense hearing the building had seen in years. And for a moment, the entire room simply breathed. As the echoes of the verdict faded, the courtroom slowly emptied, leaving behind only the quiet reminder of what had unfolded within its walls. This wasn't just a case about an impulsive act or a privileged young man. It was a moment that reminded everyone watching, inside and outside the courthouse, that justice still matters, even when pressure and power try to bend it. Judge Caprio's bold decision stood as a testament to courage under fire. A reminder that fairness means nothing if it falters in the face of influence. And a message to every viewer: you don't need a robe or a bench to stand for what's right. As the camera lingers on the empty room, the narration turns to the audience. What would you have done in Judge Caprio's place? Would you have chosen punishment or redemption? The lights dim, and the voice softens with a final invitation. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because another shocking courtroom twist is coming.